All right, well, thanks everybody for joining. My name is Vid Sista. I'd like to welcome you guys to this webinar. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about Alchemy, and then I'll go ahead and hand it off to our main speaker. So Zach, if you can hit the next slide. And go ahead and advance one more, please. And one more. You go ahead and build out this slide. So just a quick background on Alchemy. Alchemy is defined as the process of taking something extraordinary and turning it into something, taking something ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary. And that's the founding principle of our organization. And we accomplish this by hiring only the top talent in the industry. And we've built an extraordinary trust-based relationship with our customers and our partners like Nutanix. We've built the right portfolio of technology and services that are relevant for today and for the future, and we focus on creating transformative business outcomes. Go ahead and hit next slide, please. So as a result of that formula, in less than 4 years, we've grown to well over 500 customers across 13 regions in the US, and we've built an extremely talented team of professionals to continue to help our customers. Go ahead and hit the next slide. Our approach is centered on turning silos into solutions. So what that means is that instead of focusing on the disparate systems and technologies, we establish 3 practices that are based on what our customers really care about. Those practices are called experience, protect, and transform. And transform is a practice that I'm responsible for. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So a quick overview of those practices. Our experience practice is focused on end user experience and making sure that those end users have the right tools to perform their job efficiently, including things like end user computing, next-gen virtualization, and platform management. Our protect practice is focused on cybersecurity and identity management to not only protect an organization's data, but then also their end users. And our transform practice is focused on digital transformation. That's done through modernizing data centers, through cloud adoption, and process automation. So go ahead and hit next slide. So across these practice areas, we focus on consulting, project management, and managed services to provide guidance, implementation, and support to really help achieve those business outcomes. We partner with disruptive and game-changing technology vendors like Nutanix to bring the best solutions to our partners. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Zach Elbers with Nutanix to go ahead and dive into our presentation for today. So Zach, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Vid. I appreciate it. And good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Zach Elbers. I'm an account executive covering the Austin, San Antonio area, but we do have folks from all over the state of Texas that cover their specific regions out in Houston, all the way up into Dallas as well. And today we're going to be talking about, our partnership, not only with Alchemy, but an overview as well of the Nutanix. And just to stop there for a second, Alchemy, as a reseller and partner of Nutanix, has been quickly rising to one of our preferred partners, not only in the region, but just overall as a nation. So, the partnership with Alchemy has been tremendous. To Vid's point, the sales reps there, that I've worked with personally have been top tier, very, very high expertise in almost all areas of infrastructure. So without further ado, I'll go through the agenda. Like I said, an overview of Nutanix. We're going to do a featured solution on Leap, which is our disaster recovery as a service, just to kind of give you a little example of just beyond traditional hyperconverged infrastructure. And then we know, hearing from, vendors and manufacturers is one thing, but hearing from customers and their experience with those vendors speaks a little louder sometimes. So we have someone on to share their experience, not only with Nutanix, but with Alchemy as well. And then we'll close out with some Q&A and some next steps. So to start off the presentation, normally I usually like to just kind of really simplify things and tell folks, what we do. A lot of people are familiar with hyperconverged infrastructure or even Nutanix, but they may not be completely familiar with all the, of what that entails. They have questions about, well, what is an enterprise cloud? What is a private cloud? How does hyperconverged play into all that? And, Nutanix has made a lot of innovations over not only the past couple of years, but several years. And more recently, we've really converted our image from being just a hardware and software provider to just being a solely software infrastructure vendor, right? And when you look at Nutanix, we really focus on consolidating and software defining not only that virtualization layer that you probably already have in your environment, but converging that on the network and storage layer as well, to really give you that cloud-like operating model with integrated lifecycle management, which is important when you look at your IT strategies and you're trying to identify a more automated approach to be more agile in the data center, which is why you see so many people make the jump to the public cloud. Nutanix offers that cloud-like operating model, but staying on-prem and the advantage of an on-prem infrastructure as well. So why did we do it, right? So, Nutanix, we're the pioneers. We created the hyperconverged infrastructure industry. And the reason why we did it is we looked at IT departments and organizations and really saw a lot of complexities that was really hurting the business. If you look there on the left, all the different vendors that, folks have to deal with within the data center, all the different layers of complexity, single points of failure that you have, from virtualization to compute, to your SAN network fabric, to your storage. And it's not just limited to one, right? You may have multiple storage providers, multiple server providers, all that you have to manage different vendor relationships with, different deploy and cycles, buying cycles, having to manage all those different consoles and element managers for all those different layers of infrastructure. And having to do all the patches and upgrades and having to familiarize yourself with so many different products and solutions and vendors just makes it difficult to scale. Traditionally, when you look at those types of infrastructures, you're having to make these large upfront CapEx expenditures, right? You're having to do these big forklift upgrades. One year you might do networking, and then next year you might have to rip and replace your storage array and refresh that, and just really hard on the budget and having to plan for that. And all these complexities leaves little time, for your department and resources to focus on innovation, to focus on those tasks that really focus on building the business and driving growth, just because so much time is taken up by managing hardware, keeping the lights on from an underlying hardware perspective. So with that, Nutanix brought to market the first hyper-converged infrastructure solution. Our founders and co-founders came from Oracle and from Google. Our co-founder actually developed the file system for the Google Cloud Platform. And we came over and we saw an issue that we wanted to solve. And we wanted to give our customers the choice that some vendors may not necessarily offer, right? So when you look at our stack, starting from the bottom and looking at the hardware platform of choice, we're one of the only vendors where you can really use, from a software-defined storage and HCI perspective, where you can use any underlying hardware. If you're a big fan of Dell EMC or HPE, Lenovo, Cisco, you see the logos there. You have choice on what platform you want to work, right? We're a software company. We care about software defining your infrastructure, not so much the hardware, right? If you do want the support from Nutanix, and say you've heard great things and you want that, we do have our own Supermicro OEM line with NX, right? But the flexibility is there from a hardware perspective. Moving up to the HCI software layer. This is a software-defined storage distributed fabric layer, right? It's Acropolis, or AOS for short, our Acropolis operating system. Very unique, which we'll get into here in the next slide or so. And then moving up, we give our customers choice. You look a lot at some of our competitors in the HCI industry, you have to use ESXi if you want to go with something like VxRail. You have to use Hyper-V if you want to use something like storage spaces that Microsoft has to offer. Nutanix gives you choice, right? So if you love ESXi, right, you can do that. If you love Hyper-V, you can do that. Or if you want to completely get rid of your virtualization bill and ESXi bill altogether, we have our own hypervisor that comes included with every core Nutanix solution. And it's not something that is free at first, and as you scale your sockets and cores, you pay more later. It's free, it's not free, right? It's included. There's value to it, right? We don't like to say the word free because there's a lot of value into our hypervisor, but it comes included, and you'll never get a bill for our hypervisor. Not now, not ever, as you grow. And then the big attractor to a lot of folks with hyperconverged infrastructure isn't the density that HCI provides, but it's the automation. It's that one-click automation that says, hey, can you really give me a cloud-like operating model in my infrastructure, similar to what the public cloud offers? We're tired of managing hardware. When you can do that and much more with our Prism interface and GUI. So let me just take a moment to tell you about how the technology works and how we do what we do. So what you're looking at here is a traditional three-tier architecture environment, right? You have your external storage SANs down at the bottom for your different storage arrays. You have your C1 and C2, which those are depicting storage controllers. The SAN fabric or SAN switches aren't actually depicted here, but they would be in this environment as well. And then you have your compute layer, where your hypervisor and your VMs sit on top of that, right? That's traditional. What Nutanix does and what HCI does is we completely eliminate that external storage array. We software define, modernize, and virtualize your storage controllers. Bring your storage to the x86 rack mount server layer for kind of a direct attached storage model. We software define everything. And so no longer are you having to invest into these big CapEx expenditures. No longer are you having to invest into these storage controllers that are diminishing and you're not fully utilizing until year 4 or 5. As you populate, those, more shelves of drive space. When you get to year 4 or 5, those are 4 or 5-year-old, processors, right? It's just not very efficient. And you're able to start small and scale without limits is a big thing with Nutanix and HCI. You buy what you need when you need it, and you scale as you grow. You're able to increase one node at a time, which is gives you a very modular approach to scaling out your data centers. Because as you know, as an IT personnel resource within your infrastructure, it's sometimes hard to roadmap and guess what workloads are going to grow at what rate. And it makes it a lot more flexible when we can do that as you grow. And one thing that really makes us different from a lot of other solution providers is our data locality architecture. It's somewhat unique to Nutanix. So we actually keep one copy of data where the VM resides on the actual node or host, right? This is very different than when you look at our competitors where they dynamically distribute that data across the entire cluster and have to transverse across those top of rack switches, right? What this allows you to do is not only do you get better performance and lower latency because that data is closer to the VM, but you're also able to have flexibility customized for your workloads. So if you have VMs that need the IOPS of an all-flash environment, and you need that, you can do that. As you grow, and within that same cluster, you have a VM that doesn't need those IOPS, that needs hybrid. You want to go cost efficient. You can do that with Nutanix. With external storage arrays, with other HCI providers, you have to make the decision, am I going to be a hybrid environment or am I going to be an all-flash environment? With Nutanix, that completely eliminates that obstacle. You can be both. So this is what a real-life customer example looks like, as far as a customer that fully bought into Nutanix and moved all of their workloads onto one cluster. They were able to, now this customer wasn't fully virtualized. It was aging infrastructure. It was pretty old. And as you well know, the capacity for single storage drives have increased tremendously, right? So Nutanix can't take 100% of the credit, but we can take a lot of it. Because the efficiencies that we're able to do and the utilization that you've seen on the virtualization layer, and why VMware was so great when they first came to market, and why over 95% of customers are virtualized, well, that value makes sense when you start adopting that on the storage and network layer to increase your efficiency, reduce that tile space within your data center, reduce those power and cooling costs. It just makes it a lot better. And then as far as management, right, and not having to do forklift upgrades, there's tons of value, as far as what you can see here in this picture. So this is what the physical design actually looks like. Now we're pretty flexible from our physical design, right? generically, you're looking at x86, traditionally 2U rack mount servers that have 4 quarter height, blades in them. But you have flexibility. You can go 2 half heights. You can do 1 full height. You can go down to 1U if it's a robo, small environment. The opportunities to scale and customize is almost endless, right? But traditionally and generically speaking, this is what you're looking at with a Nutanix solution. It does say Nutanix on there, but keep in mind the hardware can be any hardware that you want from any vendor that you want. And I think I kind of alluded to it as, on the previous slide as far as, the benefits. This is an IDC survey. This isn't coming from Nutanix, a survey that was taking on, several customers that deployed Nutanix, several different verticals, so it's not industry or vertical specific. And these are the averages that customers saw. The big one that I like to point out is the 85% less unplanned downtime, right? That's huge as an organization. Having your environment able to update itself intelligently and automatically without having to go down. Adding that software fault tolerance on top of the existing hardware fault tolerance is huge, right? And then the numbers speak pretty loud as well as far as the return on investment that you get being able to consolidate your data center and be more efficient with your resources. Prism, as I mentioned before, is our single dashboard to manage your environment. So from virtualization to compute to storage to networking to security to data protection, the list goes on, right? You're able to manage all of that into one console. So you may be familiar with some of these consoles. And a lot of vendors will say, hey, single pane of glass, right? That's a big buzzword in the IT industry. Hey, we have a single pane of glass. Well, the truth of the matter is it's a single pane of glass for them as a provider, and what they're providing, it's not a single pane of glass for you. So you're finding yourself having to manage all these different consoles separately and familiarize yourself with the formats, right? With Nutanix, you consolidate all of those consoles into one to give you, very easy management. And then the big thing is the lifecycle management, being able to update all those elements within your data center automatically with just a couple of clicks. Drives customers crazy as far as how much time it saves them operationally. And as far as use cases go, where could I fit Nutanix? How could I evaluate? Where could I plug it in? And the answer is everywhere. But I'll tell you this: Nutanix came to market with VDI as the first use case, right? Our first 100 million as a company, 80% of that came from VDI. Just because when you look at that use case, how it scales, how it grows, when people make those multi-year transitions to VDI. The applications and the data continues to grow and you need to scale. You need that kind of scale quickly, non-disruptively kind of format. But as Nutanix evolved and grew and made ourselves more agile, as I previously described, being able to add compute nodes only, storage node onlys, or a mix thereof, it now, since it's workload specific and is providing resources specific to what the workload needs with our data locality approach, you're now able to translate that across all areas within your data center, right? And we have the products and solutions to support it. So this is a little bit of an eye chart, right? But what I'm trying to walk and describe for you here is, hey, we want to take you on a digital transformation journey, right? So if you start off the left and just kind of look on the outer, descriptions there, it kind of walks you through a path that you can see when investing into Nutanix as a partner isn't just for a niche solution. So from virtualization to software-defined storage, right, to having the advantages of Prism and being able to automate that environment, to taking your block, file, and S3 object storage and being able to consolidate everything, take that NAS and get rid of it, take everything and put it all, take those database servers, and you're able to put all of those environments into one cluster and manage that. Is absolutely tremendous. Customers love it. It scales all the way down. A lot of people say, well, Nutanix is expensive. We actually can scale super small for a small robo environment to where you can have one node server at a robo. very cost effective. You look at solutions like vRealize, we have similar approaches with our Prism Pro for operational insights. Like I mentioned, you can totally get rid of that ESXi bill and get rid of that VTAX, right, to make that a better TCO for your environment. And I didn't even mention network virtualization and microsegmentation, right? When you look at microsegmentation versus our competitors like NSX, and you account for the services, because of, I worked for Dell EMC for about 6 years and was a VxRail specialist, for Dell EMC. And the cost of an NSX, if you want to look at microsegmentation and software-defined networking, we're about 25% of the cost when you look at the services that come with that. It's pretty compelling when you want to add those east-west firewalls between your VMs. Like I mentioned before, we're gonna get into disaster recovery as a service in our Xi solution. That's our featured solution today. But the list goes on, right? To database automation and our Xi services. And Xi services are our public hosting environments where, if you want that public DR space, if you want cloud analytics, you can do all that with our even IoT with our Xi services. And then lastly, our CALM solution as far as application lifecycle management. Self-service is a big thing for you. If you want to create those blueprints for your applications, so you're not having to map those all the time, you can do that with our CALM solution. So that's a lot, right? But the point here is that you can start small with us for a core solution for your object file and block storage, and go for a core Nutanix solution. But the room for improvement and innovation throughout your data center, the path is there, and we lead the industry with it. As far as, we get this question a lot, well, hey, can Nutanix provide the same enterprise class storage services that I'm currently getting today? And the answer, as you can see here from a bunch of the main features that we can do, we absolutely can. We have the compression, the dedupe, the replication. We've completely revolutionized our data protection strategy with our RF2, or redundancy factor of 2, completely kind of getting rid of that legacy RAID approach for data protection. And I'd say not only can we do that, but we can do it better. When you look at our solution and measure it from a security perspective, we're unmatched. It's one of our biggest differentiators as a company. Our hypervisor was actually requested to be built and created. That request came from the federal government. And today, 70% of the federal government actually not only uses Nutanix for our software-defined storage and our hyperconverged appliance, but they actually choose to use our hypervisor because of the security measures that we built in, and that we built into the QA process, into the code, for those NIST certifications, for STIG compliance. All of that is built into. So day one, after you deploy your Nutanix appliance, you can do a security test and pass, right? You can't do that with other hypervisors. You can't do that with other software-defined storage solutions. You can do that with Nutanix. And it comes included at no cost, right, with our AHV hypervisor. And our market leadership, like I mentioned a couple of times already, we were the pioneers. We created the industry, and we've even held off the 500-pound gorillas. The VMware's 500,000 customer install base. We have been leading the market all 11 years of our existence, still continue today to lead as market leaders per Gartner and Forrester. And I'll wrap up with this, and this is pretty important, right, is customer satisfaction, customer success. Not only do we want to provide you a revolutionized and modernized solution, for your data center, but we want to be there after the fact, right? And here's some, statistics to kind of give you that reassurance. We have some of the highest customer satisfaction percentages in the industry. Our Net Promoter Score is best in class. As I mentioned, I was with Dell EMC for about 6 years. And, that survey that you get every year from your IT vendor saying, hey, would you recommend, our company to a friend? Dell ranged anywhere between 25 and 35. We had 1 year where we were 42. VMware really touts their NPS scores, and they should, because they're really good. They're around 50. We've been over 90 for the past 5 years. And the way that we've been able to do that is not only is our solution, engineered, for customers to be simple and modern, but it's with our support structure, right? We completely eliminated the first 2 tiers of our support model, got rid of that level 1 script resource, that level 2 tech. Every time you call Nutanix for your first call, you were getting a level 3 engineer, and over 90% of your first calls were resolved within that first call. You're not having to get these callbacks and have these drawn out tickets. And that resonates well with a lot of customers. So with that, I will pass it along to Bert, who will be featuring our XyLeap solution.
Hey, Zach, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
Fantastic. All right. Let's move on. Fantastic. We're going to talk about XyLeap, DR as a service, and business continuity, and what Nutanix is doing about it, and you know how we came about to put in the solution together. So obviously, again, the proliferation of the past 5-10 years of not only natural disasters and ransomware, cybercrime, has made almost every industry and every market wary, right, that they should and must have a disaster or business continuity strategy, right? With that said, Nutanix looked at this problem and said, hey, we got to do something about it. There's got to be a way we can address this, right? If you flip the next page, Zach, thank you. In addition to that, those 2 core problems, in the industry, right, that affect us, we also looked at the fact that a lot of our customers were really key in adopting cloud and cloud strategies, right, public cloud strategies. And so we thought we'd tackle all these 3 problems, ransomware, natural disasters, business continuity, not only from a sustainability of what we do today on-prem, but also how can we enable our customers to move to the cloud, right? Make that easy transition to the cloud. And what we found is that AOS, and Zach spoke about this earlier, AOS lends itself to that, right? Acropolis operating system is a true Nutanix enterprise cloud OS. So again, now you're having to run an enterprise class, private cloud with Nutanix, but now we can extend that experience, right? That one-click experience to your adoption of the cloud. So 5 years ago, we set out to develop Xy Cloud Services. So Nutanix now has its own public cloud, and you might ask yourself, why did Nutanix do that? Again, the transition of using AOS to easily adopt public cloud and those external, issues, right, that were happening around us in terms of, hey, the proliferation of, natural disasters, not only on the East Coast, not only the Southeast Coast, but also on the West Coast, right, and tsunamis out in Asia, right, but now ransomware being a multi-billion-dollar industry, right, we thought we'd attack all of that with this new Xy Cloud Services. So we created Xy Cloud, and the first product out of Xy Cloud is what we call XyLeap, or Disaster Recovery as a Service. Next. So 3 really key strategies or objective to creating Xy Cloud was really to reduce cost, eliminate complexity, and enable consistency, right? And I'll start from the bottom up, because the consistency point is really the biggest one that we kind of see customers adapt to, right? Is the fact that now you have the same consistent control and management framework that you do with Nutanix on-prem to manage your infrastructure in the cloud, right? So that consistency carries across from your experience on-prem with Nutanix Prism and Prism Central, right? That carries over into managing your infrastructure in the cloud. No need to learn any new, new platforms, right? And then that talks about how we eliminate that complexity, right? The adoption of public cloud. So we eliminate the complexity of the adoption of public cloud, right? With the same control plane, again, the same management interface, right? And not having to learn new platforms in the cloud when you move to the cloud. Also, the fact that now we've automated and orchestrated all this, DR as a DR complexity, right? All these runbooks, we've eliminated all that complexity. So now it's truly, a easy one-click experience and reduce cost. Anything that you can think of today of building your own data center, do-it-yourself DR, right? That is eliminated with the fact that now you have your XyLeap in Nutanix's Xy Cloud Services, which is now a data center on demand. Literally, you can use it to actually run real workloads in the cloud, as well as protect your current workloads from on-prem into Nutanix Zyleap. Next. So again, when you think about creating and designing a disaster recovery strategy, right? You think about all the things that need to happen across the spectrum in your organization, not only your organization, but from a technical perspective. Recovery site provisioning, replication, right? Runbook automation, security policies that you have to build between the two sites, network connectivity. We eliminate all of that and giving you a true one-click experience. If you click next and let this, automation run, we eliminate all that complexity with Zyleap, right? And again, it's truly a one-click experience, and I would love to show each and every one of you a demo of that solution if we get around to that. Because it is a public cloud service, again, Cloud security from an infrastructure perspective and a cloud perspective, that's the responsibility of Nutanix. Again, these are enterprise grade, public cloud data centers that are operated, managed, and supported by Nutanix. As such, we have all the public cloud required certifications for, ISO, SOC 2 Type 1 and FIPS 140-2. We have FedRAMP certification coming soon as well. But again, we have end-to-end encryption between your on-prem entity and Zyleap data centers, as well as data encryption of data at rest, right? We support DDoS protection and WAF and penetration testing throughout the life cycle of the service. So that's not something you have to be concerned with. However, anything related to VM protection, application security, that's your responsibility. We actually do offer, though, again, secured software-defined networking that isolates you from any other workload, any other customers in the cloud, right? As well as giving you 2 virtual private clouds that are actually secure and independent of each other as part of the Zyleap service. You can bring your own firewall to actually instantiate your own security posture that you have today on-prem. You can bring that into Zy as well. And then we offer Active Directory to allow role-based access control to instantiate the service or log into the service, as well as 2-factor authentication is a must to log into the service. Next. Again, so interestingly enough, we started this journey 5 years ago. We actually went live with the service in November of 2018. In November of 2018, we started out with US West, US East, and London data centers. Each one of these regions has 2 availability zones or 2 actual physical data centers. In December of 2019, we actually opened up Italy. And since March of 2020, we now have Germany and Asia opened as well as regions for Zy. So this is a true full-blown investment of Nutanix to actually be a competitive offering to the current hyperscalers, i.e., you guys know all those who those popular hyperscalers are. But again, we wanted you to know that this is not a fly-by-night operation, and it's something that we're actually vetting, a lot of investment in. And again, as Zach mentioned before, all our Zy, Zy services will be part of the Zy Cloud services in the near future. Next. I just wanted to give you, if you blow this up, Zach, to like the next, right here. No, one more, right there. So if you just stop there for a second. So what I wanted to show you guys is actually the ROI that's capable with Zyleap, right? So here's an example of a customer, BB Industries, that we took a snapshot of their current annual revenue and compared that to what it costs to actually run and procure Zyleap, right? So we actually took into account also the productivity of their employees. So on an annual basis, let's say the average cost of an employee fully blown is $100K per year, right? That boils down to $1,500 per hour, if you will, for each employee. On an annual revenue side, we see they have $273.6 million in revenue, annual revenue. That's about $31,000, per hour. The cost of them being down, or revenue loss per hour, should a disaster happen, whether it's cybercrime, natural disaster, any other type of unfortunate event, right, that could bring their entire, operations down, would cost them approximately $32,700 per hour, right? Considering lost productivity from employees and then lost revenue because they're not building any widgets, right? That cost of downtime, right? If you boil that over the cost of a regular day's work, 8 hours per day, right, could mean $261,000 or approximately $262,000 realized, right, in lost revenue. That includes both productivity and actual revenue, right? The cost of Xyleap for 3 years is less than 2 hours that cost, right? 1 hour and 8 minutes. So in 1 hour and 8 minutes, they could actually return that, get the gain on that return on investment from just acquiring Xyleap. And again, this is just a snapshot of, just one, company and what the return on investment looks like for Xyleap and how, cost effective Xyleap is. Again, from an ROI perspective, you're seeing quick return on investment. From a TCO perspective, it's literally less than 30 to 50% the cost of doing it yourself data centers, right? Again, you can expound on this in any which way we can. Feel free to reach out to Zach, myself, or Vic, and we can make this happen and show you a much deeper dive into Xyleap, and I'll actually demo the product for you as well and show you the ease of use and the one-click failover failback that we can accomplish with Xyleap. That's it, Zach. Really quick, but want to finish there and then give this over back to Vic, and Vic, you have the.
Yeah, thanks, Bert and Zach, for that very informative overview. Before we get to the questions, we definitely want to hear from an actual Nutanix customer. We've got Jared Hallmark on the call from Fairway Independent Mortgage Company. So, Jared, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience with Nutanix so far, and what you've enjoyed about it, using it in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jared Hallmark. I'm the VP of IT infrastructure at Fairway Independent Mortgage Company. I've been working with Nutanix now for about 3 years since I got here. I'm an NCP, Nutanix Certified Professional. I'm also part of the Nutanix Technology Champion Program, and I lead the Dallas-Fort Worth Nutanix user group. Fairway's been a customer for about 5 years. So kind of the early days of Nutanix, so to speak. We started off basically with a UCS solution. Those of you that use Cisco UCS, I mean, it's a complex system. It especially can be with maintenance and expansion and things like that. So with the growth that Fairway has seen in the last 3 to 5 years, we really wanted a solution that could grow with us, that really scaled very easily. So we bought into Nutanix. We have around 250 nodes now today. We have around 4,000 VMs, and that's across 3 different sites. So the big thing, when I came on board with Fairway, I was huge, VMware advocate. I've been using VMware for 10 plus years now. And so it was a little bit of a gut punch coming into an environment with Nutanix. I didn't really know what to expect. But after I kind of got my feet wet, got in to looking at the system, and especially, support, Nutanix's support is really what grabbed a hold of me. Their support, I've worked with a lot of vendors. I've been in IT for quite a while now. And their support is probably the best, if not close to it, I've seen with any other vendor. They're very knowledgeable, very quick to respond. Escalation is easy. It really was an easy experience, dealing with support. That was really, I think, the thing that grabbed hold of me to begin with, and really made me, pay attention to what this platform could do for us. The underlying system, Prism, is kind of the central, Prism Central is sort of the centralized management interface for all this. And so that allowed very easy way to do updates and to manage the environment. So it was familiar to me, coming from a vCenter background. And at this point, especially being involved so heavily with Nutanix, we've POC'd, are using a huge portion of the Nutanix portfolio at this point, including Xyleap. We've used Xyleap. We've tried it out. I've needed to, for some of my demos with the user group, just to see, to speak on behalf of it, and to know what offerings are out there with Nutanix. A big thing that Nutanix has really come a long way with, especially since I've been there, is the automation piece. Calm's a huge part of that, from a from basically a soup to nuts kind of perspective. But some of the new features with Prism Central allow people that don't necessarily code to go in and build out their own automation, sort of in an if this then that type of configuration, very point and click and drag and drop. It makes it very easy to do some basic and more advanced automations and notifications. So that's a huge deal. The other thing that I would say is that I've noticed with Nutanix, and you can kind of tell with what I've been involved in, is that when you buy into Nutanix, you kind of buy into a community more than anything. Nutanix, they have a very good, user-based community that is very helpful. The people at Nutanix are very helpful. I'm on Slack with a lot of them, and we can get questions answered quickly. We can ask about things, and you have a voice with Nutanix for sure. I've met with product managers, and talked about new features and bugs and things like that. And I've had, a real effect and change in the product, which is unlike anything else I've had with other vendors. So it's been a great experience. And that's the big thing, with, recommending this to peers and talking about this, in venues like this, where it really kind of makes it easy. Because you very easily sort of geek out with your peers and with the employees themselves at Nutanix. So it's been a fun journey this last 3 years with them. So as far as I'll say a few things about Alchemy. We've been partners with them for quite a while as well. They've been great for support with Nutanix as well as other solutions. We've got a huge Citrix presence as well, and Alchemy's been a great contribution to that as well. So
awesome. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions to the panel or to the audience. If you've got any questions for Zach, Bert, or Jared, or myself, if you guys can go ahead and post those, or I think, do they have everybody muted? Yeah, if you guys can go ahead and post or raise your hand, and we can answer those questions. Got a question here for Jared. Would you ever go back to VMware?
So I didn't get into that very much, but part of our environment still is VMware. We have some VMware running on top of Nutanix. Our Citrix environment, however, which makes up probably 75% of our environment, we are about 95% converted over to AHV. As modular as Citrix is, it's made it very easy sort of to move over to AHV, and there's not a lot of touch on the hypervisor side, but there's the transition between that was very easy. Those of you that have used VMware, I mean, AHV is just as easy to navigate. But yes, we do still have some VMware in the environment. There are some engineers on our team that are pushing us to get rid of the rest of the VMware. It's definitely put a dent in our licensing costs for VMware. That's a huge deal. You know, but VMware does run great on it. We've had a lot of success, and we will probably looking at moving more of what we call our production environment. So everything that's not Citrix, basically, over to AHV as well. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Got another question. This one, I think, Zach, will probably be for you. I've heard that Nutanix is expensive compared to other solutions. How would you answer that? So, Zach, this is a question for you. If
sorry about that. Yeah. So as far as absolutely. No, I appreciate that, Vid. You know, as far as cost goes, I mean, it's going to be really very relative. The way our pricing structure works is going to be based off of your workloads, right? So depending on, you know, the amount of cores, the amount of SSDs is how the pricing structure works, right? Out of how many cores and terabytes of SSD storage, doesn't include hybrid storage. But yeah, so it all kind of depends, right? I mean, I've done, you know, a robo, you know, solution for under 20 grand, right? So, I mean, it can scale down low. I think people get this depiction of Nutanix being expensive because you see the Fed, you see a lot of big enterprises utilize Nutanix because of its scalability and agility. And so they automatically put them in the box of, hey, you know what, that's enterprise. But it's quickly growing and has grown to the mid-market space. That's where we've seen the most growth in our company is actually in those small and medium businesses to where you can take those one-man IT shops and very affordably, even more affordably sometimes, depending on, you know, if you're going to adopt AHV is a big factor, you know, for that. But yeah, no, cost can definitely go down. Very low entry points.
Okay.
I may be able to add to that just a little bit. So, and I'm brutally honest with some of this, but it's just me. So I'm not going to say Nutanix is cheap by any means, but you have to do the math. You know, you have to look at, you know, this is a hyper-converged solution. You are getting storage as well as compute. So you're going to have to look at, you know, how those cost comparisons work with, you know, buying a SAN. Buying the infrastructure for a SAN, you know, you're switching, and all of that. Plus, you know, a lot of times you're looking at experience in managing a SAN as well, and what that entails. Above and beyond that, you're also getting a hypervisor. You know, that's the way we are kind of looking at it from a licensing perspective. Is that with VMware on top of Nutanix, you know, you're adding that additional cost of VMware, but you don't have to. You know, you're going to get, you know, pretty much all the features you're going to get with VMware with the product. So that looking at it at that perspective and kind of consolidating your pricing and really kind of doing as close as you can to apples, because with HCI it gets a little tricky. I think you'll find that it's definitely comparable with a smaller physical footprint, management footprint, you know, knowledge, you know, curve footprint, all those kind of things.
So
I think
yeah, I'll add a little bit to that as well, if I may. For those on the call, my name is Rob Wilcox. I'm the Houston SE for the commercial space. I was previously a client for about 3.5 years, and I kind of went through a similar exercise where I had to get off of my existing compute and storage. Everything was very long in the tooth, out of warranty, and really the game was, why not Nutanix? We knew we wanted to do something different. So when I did the TCO internally of what it would cost to either do nothing or replace everything with the same, you know, type of 3-tier architecture, I was in that same ballpark. When you replace all your compute and a lot of your switching and your entire storage platform, it's actually not that expensive comparatively. You're in that door. And once I looked at the, you know, reducing and eliminating the VMware cost, it really made a lot more sense. So for our environment, again, that same exercise, you know, when you kind of break the pieces apart and understand what you're getting in the entire platform over time, it made a whole lot more sense. It was a lot easier to chew and a lot easier to sell upstream with the executive staff. So it's not that scary when you look at the value of everything that's in the platform.
No, thanks, Rob, for chiming in. And I think that's the key is you mentioned the value. And I think if you're purely just looking at price versus value, not incorporating the soft costs, as Jared mentioned as well, and in terms of the people making things easier, streamlined operations and things like that. And those are all things that, with Nutanix and Alchemy, we can help you to do that TCO analysis if you have those questions. The other thing I would recommend that I've heard a lot of customers is find a project to get it in the door. You're not necessarily going to go and rip and replace your entire data center with Nutanix, but you're going to find some type of a use case or project, pilot it, get it in to test it. And typically what we've seen there is that the folks that have actually tested it out in a use case, whether it's VDI or some other type of project, then they can actually start to understand the value by getting their hands on it. So we've seen that approach very successful for a lot of our customers in getting it adopted. I think we got time for one more question. I think, Bert, this one's for you. How would you compare Xyleap to using something like Azure Site Recovery for disaster recovery?
Right. So great question, by the way. We get this all the time. And to be honest with you, Azure Site Recovery, again, you have to pretty much, it's kind of a guessing game as to, how you, what instances in Azure you're going to use to hydrate back your snapshots, right? It's pretty much a guessing game. The difference between the Xyleap is the fact that you're actually bringing over the same workloads that you have on-prem into Xyleap. So we're snapshotting those VMs, we're bringing those VMs to Xyleap, you instantiate those VMs, is exactly the same VM size, capacity, everything looks exactly the same. The beauty about Xyleap, the orchestration and automation of Xyleap as well, and huge differentiator is the fact that from a networking perspective, we recreate the same VLANs port groups that you've created on-prem. We recreate those exactly as is with the same CIDR information and preserve the IP addresses and the MAC addresses of the underlying VMs, right? Or the overlying VMs, if you will. So therein, we take all the guesswork out of, bringing your workloads from on-prem to Xy. Everything is automated. And again, as well as the network information, completely automated. So now you're standing up that infrastructure looked exactly the same in Xy as it does on-prem. All the guesswork is taken out of it.
Great explanation, Bert. So it sounds like it takes that additional support architecture, configuration of that DR environment, and then just makes it completely seamless. You don't have to do anything. Basically, absolutely. Click a button and then you're migrated over.
That's it.
Okay, that's great. Awesome. I don't see any other questions right now. If any do come in, please reach out to either your Alchemy account manager, your Nutanix representative, or the folks here on the call today. I want to thank Jared for your time and your candid feedback on what it's like to be a Nutanix customer. Rob, thank you for jumping in with some comments, and Zach and Bert, appreciate your time in presenting for us. And that's all we've got, folks. So enjoy the rest of your week, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Have a good one.